Yo, welcome back to Bonzer Books, man. I'm Anthony back again with Anthony and Sean. And we've been loving this book, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, man. If you don't have it, you definitely need to go ahead and pick it up. But it's an incredible book. And today we're just going to kind of discuss the first four chapters. And the chapter right off the bat is called What Are Emotions For? You know what I mean? So with him being a psychologist, he's able to really dissect his thoughts and really try to get into it as an artist would and really kind of deliver the story. So immediately he jumps into a story about a woman who is pushing her child out of a car crash just enough to save herself and literally putting her own health in the back seat while she is forging the energy toward her child living. And you know, immediately he gives the juxtaposition between emotion and intelligence, and how emotion really has no bearing on exactly what your thoughts are, and that love can take the driver's seat at any time.
Yeah, chapter one was very interesting to me for, one of the major reasons. Right into it on page four, Daniel Goleman says, repeated over evolutionary history, the survival value of our emotional repertoire was attested to by becoming imprinted in our nerves as innate automatic tendencies for the human heart. Basically saying that our emotional responses, especially when it comes to our need to survival, are imprinted in our is imprinted in our DNA. And I automatically thought about, the song Kendrick Lamar, DNA by Kendrick Lamar. I got royalty inside my DNA. All these things that us as Black men go through, it is a great possibility, that these emotional responses and these traumas are imprinted in our DNA and kind of um, passed on to generation.
I agree with both of my co-hosts. I'm not going to piggyback too much on it, but I do really like this first chapter because he's laying down the breakdown of how emotional intelligence works. It's like a focus of like your personal qualities, such as like your initiative, your empathy, like your optimism, perseverance, all like those great adjectives. I feel like Daniel Goleman is trying to get us to understand, like how Anthony said, it's in your DNA. It's how you're reacting to what is around you. It's like the saying goes, it's not the hand you're dealt, it's what you do with the hand that you're dealt.
And one more thing about chapter one that I forgot to mention is Daniel Goleman also talks about how our neocortex, which is more so like the thinking brain, he kind of touches on this at the end of the chapter. The neocortex, the thinking brain, evolved from the limbic area, which is known for our emotions. So our thoughts kind of evolved, or our brain of that controls our thoughts kind of evolved from emotion. So you can see how our emotions kind of, especially if strong emotions, can come before, our thoughts or our logic towards those emotions.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, I think that's what makes chapter one so interesting is that it kind of guides you into a little bit of information that you have, and then a little bit of information that you don't have. Kind of finding a great common ground for that, and that really kind of leads us right into chapter two. And I can remember reading chapter one and then having to put the book down, just because I felt like it was such a heavy read, and I got to the second chapter and I read the title of the second chapter, and it goes, Anatomy of an Emotional Hijacker. And, I thought to myself, what the hell does that mean? And, and then I saw the quote that was underneath the title. And the quote read, Life is a comedy for those who think and a tragedy for those who feel. And I put the book down again. And as I began to read, I really started to enjoy this chapter because in this chapter, he really breaks down the science of the brain and really trying to get you to understand how the brain works, as Anthony alluded to earlier with the neocortexes, all the way in the back of your brain, and that's where the thinking part comes from. But your oblongata, which is in the middle part of your brain, is literally where all your emotions lie and where your any type of rationale that you would have for any type of emotion stems from that memory stuck in the middle of your brain. And it talks about that correlation about how you feel when you see things when you're fearful. Seeing things, it goes directly to the thalamus and then to the oblongata. So when you see a snake or a mouse and you jump, that's your body telling you that, hey, man, we got to get out of this. And your thinking brain hasn't even caught really the formidable opinion yet, hasn't really made a decision. And it just really kind of is a lot of sciencey words in this chapter, but I think it really lays a foundation for later in the book because this knowledge now is grateful that you have it going into the rest of the text.
Yeah, so just touching on what Virgil said, you know, reading this chapter, chapter 2, my first time reading through it, it was a lot of heavy, more scientific terms such as like the visual cortex, the amygdala, the thalamus, all of these terms. It can seem kind of overwhelming, and at times, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of lost my interest. But then going throughout the rest of the book and then rereading chapter 2, you kind of appreciate the chapter more, and that it describes kind of the thought process, the passing of emotions and going through emotions that we talk about later in the chapter. It gives the scientific explanation of it in chapter 2. And he even says in chapter 2, some emotional reactions happen out earlier. Virgil touched on it, Sean touched on it. When things happen that cause great fear and great excitement, sometimes we can lose consciousness of those emotions and just react based off of those emotions.
So I think they wrapped up everything for chapter 2. I'm going to introduce my favorite chapter, chapter 3. And there's a saying about this chapter: when smart is dumb. Daniel in this chapter talks about how it's like crucial for your emotional side to be like the forefront before your logical side. Like, so for your like, just for an example, they say the SAT doesn't measure how smart you are. You can be measured by how well you know how to make your engine go, make yourself go. How can you persevere? How can you get through obstacles? Why does your coworker act like this on these days? And being able to understand like their emotional side, like being able to be in tune with not only your emotions, but other people's emotions. And also just, he says that this is something that is taught. It can be taught to children if we take the time to teach them. Like, it is very, very crucial that you are aligned with your emotions, not just sad or happy, but just like why your body is reacting to certain things. Why do you move the way you move? And use that to your best knowledge and use that for your intelligence.
Go ahead, Virgil.
Oh yeah, appreciate it, man. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's really a great parallel, this chapter, you know, when smart is dumb. And, you know, to kind of piggyback on what Sean has said is that, you know, some of these things have to be taught. And we kind of see, you know, a little bit of, you know, the difference between, you know, we all having that, you know, the most intelligent people can make, you know, the dumbest mistakes, or, you know, maybe you meet someone that is really smart but doesn't have a lot of common sense. These things also play into the brain, but it also plays into, you know, the trauma and the experience that individuals may have had or may go through. So it's all about the formality in which the brain is prepared in. So you know, you have to really think about what structure lies and what type of training that you're giving your actual brain in order for you to really kind of make that evolution possible for yourself. So that's definitely something that is, you know, it's not one of my favorites, but you know, I definitely can dig it.
Yeah, so I think that chapter 3 was kind of moving from chapter 2, which was like scientific knowledge, to how this knowledge applies to, you know, our daily lives and our success in our lives. One of the biggest things that I took away from it was interpersonal intelligence versus intrapersonal intelligence. Interpersonal intelligence being how to understand how other people work, what motivates them, and being able to use that effectively in order to maneuver throughout the workplace. And intrapersonal is more so having to do with how you feel within yourself and being cognizant of that and aware of that, and also, you know, kind of maneuvering your way through life and success with that knowledge of self, which is a perfect kind of segue into chapter 4, which is entitled Know Thyself. And is probably my favorite chapter out of these first 4 chapters. It was a lot of information in this chapter, talking about recognizing our mood and cognizantly changing our mood based on our awareness of our mood. Right off the top, like within the first couple of pages, Daniel Goleman says self-awareness has a more powerful effect on strong aversive feelings. The realization that this is anger offers a great degree of freedom, not just the option to act on it, but so I think that's a perfect segue into, which is probably my favorite chapter, chapter 4, which is titled Know Thyself. And this chapter just talks about recognizing our mood and, you know, within recognizing our mood, effectively going about changing it if it's not a feeling that we kind of want to possess. Within the first 4 pages, Daniel has a piece that really stuck out to me. He says, self-awareness has a more powerful effect on strong aversive feelings. The realization of this is anger I'm feeling offers a great degree of freedom, not just the option to act on it, but the added option of letting it go. And this part really stuck out to me because this is kind of similar to the books that I'm reading in my personal and daily life. Just being aware of how you are feeling and kind of not letting that feeling become you. Understanding that feelings are transient, they're going to come and go, but you have to also be aware of why you're feeling this way and kind of working towards changing it, and change what you can and accept what you can't.
Yeah, for me, like I said, you know, definitely was Know Thyself was one of my better chapters, I think, as well. It was, you know, being able to dig deep into yourself and being able to really, you know, Anthony alluded to, be cognizant in your own feelings and in your own skin. Just in the very few pages, as he mentioned, I took a quote from it. It says, at its best, self-observation allows such an Aquarius awareness of passionate or turbulent feelings. Meaning that, you know, I mean, when you with yourself, you're either going to have to be passionate into what you're doing and be honest with yourself, you know, or you're going to have really turmoil. You're going to have those turbulent feelings, you know, and that comes from that, you know, that deep, you know, knowing within yourself. You know, it takes a lot for someone to know yourselves. And even sometimes, you know, people laugh sometimes, you know, they say, you know, oh man, you know, he ain't shit or whatever the case is. You know, it takes a lot for someone to not be shit, but to make something of yourself takes a lot. You know?
So I kind of touched on chapter 4 in my chapter 3 spiel of knowing thyself, knowing how you move, what makes your engine go. I like this chapter a lot because I feel like it is the groundwork is laid down of how you can set yourself up for success in a sense. Doing my own research outside the book of Knowing Thyself, I found a quote from a psychologist. People who lack the ability to describe their feelings often cannot distinguish physical sensations from emotions, and they have difficulty telling one emotion from another. So I feel like he's telling us that basically in order to figure out other emotions, the initial emotions to why you're reacting need to be addressed. It's kind of like a domino effect. In order to knock all the dominoes down, you have to take that first step and knock the first domino down.
Yeah, that's pretty fire. You're gonna have to send me that quote when we get off of this call, man. But, you know, that also brought me to made me think about another point within chapter 4. You know, I said this was my favorite chapter. There's a lot of points that I like. But, you know, you kind of touched on it just talking, Sean. If, Goldman says that he had Fraud, who was like a big psychologist or scientist. He made clear that most emotions that we go through are unconscious. So like, you know, when we wake up, the sun shining or being cloudy out, or somebody calling your name versus you waking up naturally, or an alarm going off. Getting up out of the bed and tripping and stumbling versus having time to get up, stretch and yawn and feel how you're feeling. These little things, not just in the morning, but throughout the day, have a effect on our mood. And sometimes most of the time, we don't consciously identify with that feeling until, for most people, those emotions get too strong either way, whether it be rage or whether it be elation. Those emotions get too strong to where we have no choice but to be aware of them. And I think that in this chapter, Goldman is trying to say, as we all touched on throughout, kind of bringing this full circle, that the more we can become aware of even the little things that have an effect on our emotion, the more powerful we will become in our personal lives and in other people's lives. And it will also allow us to understand other people more. So, yeah.
You know, as we were speaking, you know, before we actually got on the call off the air, you know, just to wrap it up, you know, emotional intelligence is really just about, you know, having discipline. You know, I told you we could switch this out and call this book Discipline, and it would somewhat mean the same thing, and just really kind of just being able to have the best awareness of your emotions, having the best control of your emotions, and also just being able to have that actual evolution occur for yourself. So we definitely gonna, you know, continue to get back into this book. Make sure y'all continue to like, comment, subscribe. We still got the free link out there for you. You don't have to actually go buy the book, but if you like me and you know, you want to actually have a physical copy, you can definitely find it on Amazon for yourself. So we're gonna make sure y'all stay tuned, man, and we're gonna keep it moving.
Yes, sir.